We are fortunate enough to be joined by Beth Brodowski, a longtime partner of mine. We used to work at Network for Good on webinars together, and we've brought her back into the Bonterra ecosystem and super excited to have her back. Beth is the president of Iris Creative Group, and she works with nonprofit leaders to focus their audience and inspire them to action. For 27 years, she and her team have developed nonprofit branding, marketing, and fundraising communication tools and work in consulting that really helps folks kind of just understand, the purpose of a brand and nonprofit organization, right? Which I know is kind of why you're all here today. She's helped thousands of marketers build their skills specific to those communications through workshops, education sessions, etc. And is super excited to be hosting the very first branding conference for nonprofits in September, which, spoiler alert on the screen, Bonterra is actually the title sponsor of, and we could not be more excited to help bring this conference to life because, like I said, I've been working with Beth for a little bit now, and I know she is just a bundle of knowledge, and there is no better person to learn from about the branding world here for nonprofits. So I will take my proper back seat, as I am not the star of today's show, and turn it over to you, Beth.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So I'm going to get my share and then go into full screen mode over here myself.
All right, Beth. I know we
All right, we're showing the right thing.
Nope, we're showing the right thing.
There we go. Yep.
Let's go.
It takes a little minute. So Thank you all. Thank you, Amanda, for having me today. And of course, I want to thank Bonterra for being so generous and sponsoring this new and exciting conference that we're putting out here. Again, my name is Beth Brodowski, and I have run a branding company called Iris Creative for, oh God, believe it or not, in November, it'll be 29 years, which blows my mind that I could have been doing anything for that long. And it's been so interesting to see the journey of branding and marketing in nonprofits over that time. And so we're so thrilled to be able to come on and talk to you about that topic today and how branding impacts nonprofits, how it impacts communications and the world. And as I'm building this presentation, I decided that there was really only one place I could start today. So has anyone been watching the news lately? I would be curious, put it in the chat if you have been following all of the crazy drama that's been happening with Cracker Barrel. Yes, right? I mean, and so for me, I don't know, part of me is horrified and part of me is like, wow, branding is getting front page news on Google. It's been really interesting. I mean, I'd love to hear what any of you think about what's going on. But for anybody that hasn't necessarily caught this news story, last week, Cracker Barrel unveiled a new logo. And almost immediately, CBS News reported that shares fell 7.2%, and then ultimately within days dipped down to 11%. Like they dropped 11%. In theory, on the surface, or basically the way they reported it, over a logo, right? So at a company the size of Cracker Barrel, that meant that they shed 94 million in market value, right? Which is just unbelievable to me. And that's an overall loss of 200 billion in its overall market capitalization. Wow. That's really shocking when you think about that. And so what they said is that the store said Cracker Barrel has been working to refresh their image through new menu items, redecorated stores that they said eschew the 55-year-old chain's old-timey approach in favor of a more modern look. It's unusual for a company's share price to plunge this dramatically due to a logo redesign. However, it's not unusual for marketing missteps to cause investors to question a company's strategy. And I think as nonprofits, what we have to think about are who are our investors. You might look at a story like this and feel like, $1 billion, okay, that has nothing to do with us. But in their case, their investors are not unlike your investors, not unlike your donors, not unlike your funding people. And when you do something that surprises or shocks them, it can really impact trust. It can really impact the connection that people feel with any type of an organization. And so the company said that our values haven't changed and the heart and soul of Cracker Barrel hasn't changed. that the criticism has shown us that we could have done a better job sharing who we are and who we'll always be. And the thing is, I wasn't in the boardroom. This was not my project. I didn't work on this, but who knows exactly what happens? Like, we don't actually know what they did or how they got to that point. But amazingly, so on the 21st of August is when they announced all of this. And then yesterday, the 27th of August, they announced that in response to public concerns, they will not be keeping their logo and will retain their original design. And I heard in other reports that they spent 700 million on this change. And so what's really interesting to me in this story is that they said themselves that they have been making substantive changes. They've been working on changing their menu. They have been like brightening up their stores, getting rid of all the tchotchkes and making them white, painting them white. And it wasn't until they changed the logo that the uproar happened, that all of this bubbled up in even in the stock market. So Branding Journal reported that their sales have been dropping since the pandemic. So this isn't new. You know, this is happening now, but this problem, that the challenges that the organization was facing that made them decide to do something, has been going on for years. And the efforts that they've been doing to try and fix it have been going on since 2024. So they changed the colors of their stores. They got rid of stuff. They changed their menus, and crickets. None of us heard anything. They go and make this change to the logo, and people went berserk. I'm curious why you guys think that that might be the case. Belinda, I love what you're saying, that an image is always about the people and what they see first. They made this very, very costly mistake. And I think that this is a really important thing to think about. Another thing that Branding Journal said when they were reporting on it was a great article, and it's linked here at the bottom of the slide, is that now, none of us, again, none of us were in the boardroom, but the reporters are saying that trying to appeal to everyone usually weakens a brand and blurs what makes it special. Cracker Barrel should certainly define who they want to focus on, whether it's a new group or their loyal customers, and build changes around that audience. With a clear focus, the brand can make wise choices and stay true to its identity and create stronger connections with the customers that matters most. So a lot of the reporting was around that their core customers are 65 and older. And since the pandemic, older demographics have maybe not been going out to restaurants as much. Things have really shifted through the pandemic. And then post-pandemic, with tariffs and everything, food prices are really escalating. So it's possible that their core customers who may be on a fixed income or on more limited income, over the things that are just naturally happening in the world, are not going as much. And it's not necessarily like you can get those people back. And so any corporation, any organization is going to say, well, if the people who always loved us aren't showing up and probably aren't going to show up again, what do we do? Like, where do we go from there? So what happens a lot is that where people go from there is from, these are the people that love us. We need to grow. So let's go get somebody else, anybody else, everybody else. Have any of you ever been through a project that felt like that, where what's working wasn't working anymore? So it's almost like somebody just is like, let's just, throw stuff out there and see what sticks. Let's go after just something different for the sake of being different. And it seems like their strategy, when they say that they've gone through this modernization effort, that analysts seem to be believing that what they're saying is that they're referring to a younger, more affluent demographic. So they've been kind of cleaning up their stores and basically making them look very clean and white and generic. And it's having an impact. It's obviously having an impact in the stock market. But here's the thing. It's very easy to see a story like this and think, oh, rebrands are a waste of time. Look at all the money they spent and it didn't even work. So clearly a rebrand doesn't fix anything. They threw $700 million into this and it was a disaster. That's it. I can see how I could tell you the story and can be like, glad I came today, right? But the problem isn't that a rebrand isn't helpful. There's tons and tons and tons of organizations that never get into the news like that. There are people that rebrand and it's this quiet thing that just happens over time. How many times has Starbucks changed their logo? You know, these things happen. The problem is that we don't know what kind of thinking went into these results. And so it looks that they fell into a trap that I think many people fall into when they think about using a rebrand to fix things. So when we think about rebranding, much of the time, this is what we think about. We think about this logo. We think about the colors. We think about maybe some advertising that you might have seen that like stuck in your head. Oh, that was a great ad. It was a funny ad. You might think about a billboard that you've seen, something visual that is in your head. We call that a hook. So that's not the brand. We think of that as the brand, but it's really just this visual anchor that helps connect you to what you feel about the brand. So imagine, this is a little analogy. Imagine it's like meeting somebody for the first time. So if you meet somebody new, you might think about their hair or their clothing or the kind of glasses that they wore, but you really only have a surface understanding of who they are. So when you meet people and they're new, you think you might know them because you recognize them, but you don't really know them. You don't know what they're about. You don't know what they care about. The logo is like that. So when you meet people time after time after time, you begin to build a relationship with them. And so that is going a little deeper into the experience. So you have your brand image that you have, who I see, and you have your brand experience, which starts to be, this is what I know. This is what I'm experience of working with you. And the feeling from a brand really comes from that experience. Just like with people, every interaction that you have either draws you in or pushing you away. You've all met people for the first time that you would rather not meet again. So over time, those experiences create an opinion. And as companies that are trying to create brands, as organizations that are trying to build a donor base, we're hoping that this this experience that people have creates an attachment, that somebody looks at it and it becomes how you recognize them, but it doesn't define how you feel about them. You probably all have people in your life that you've gotten to know over time. And, maybe when you first met them, all you could see was that mole on their nose. But over time, who they are and what they mean to you makes all of that stuff become immaterial. And it just might mean that's how you know them when you pick them up at the airport, but it's not what you feel about them. So, but that recognition makes you feel connected. Just like with people, when you recognize a brand, you feel connected and safe. So when somebody makes a big change like this, it can be shocking, And so imagine that this person that you know and love went on one of those TV makeover shows, and they came out of that TV makeover show, beautiful teeth, blonde highlights, contact lenses, who knows what, and they're practically unrecognizable. It's going to take some time to adjust. So lots of times, a brand makeover that you hear about in the news is what I love to call a kerfuffle, right? People are making a big fuss about something because they can make a big fuss about something. But ultimately, in many cases, what somebody loves and feels about brand supersedes what the logo looks like. And sometimes changing that logo is about updating, refreshing. Sometimes the image is the problem. If you have an outdated logo or you've got old graphics, you want to just modernize. And so that's something to think about. Where are you connected and where are you disconnected from it? Now, if this image change is supported by the actions, if the experience when you make that change is in alignment with what you're experiencing and what you want to experience, it can make you feel that this was good. But if that image change is not in alignment, it's not lining up with your experience, it's, worse, like the person goes and gets a makeover, but they still forget your birthday and they're not putting the dishes in the dishwasher. Like you could be like, well, you're all pretty now, but you're still the same person. That's driving me crazy, And so this is exactly what branding is. When you change the outward look, are you doing it to support internal alignment that's already working, but maybe your brand has fallen off and isn't keeping up with how people feel about you? Lots of times we do that, where an organization has grown and evolved, and like your brand, your visual brand just doesn't feel like it represents the person that you know you are today. And so you've got to elevate that to get it in alignment. Other times it's the opposite. You do a change and you need to change. Like it's kind of telegraphing and pushing a change forward. But in some cases, it's a change where it's a disconnect, and you make this big pretty change and you try and promote it as this is great, this is new, this is wonderful, and people are saying nope, still broken underneath. It's like putting a new coat of paint on a house without fixing the leaky pipes, right? And so when you think about that, these are all tactical things about brands. And the word strategy and tactics can be really confusing in the world. Tactical things means they're executional. They're things that people can touch, taste, feel, experience, and point to. I see that. I read that. I experienced that. But the thing is, while we're curating a brand, while we're planning, while we're trying to use it to guide people in the directions that we want, the brand really lives inside everybody that interacts with you. It it actually comes from what people see, what they hear, and what they feel, not what you show, what you do, and what you tell them. So we guide it, but it actually shows up every day that people interact with you. So all these things that you're doing every day are really valuable because they build up the brand over time. It's about delivering on that experience you're promising. And it sounds like in some cases, some people promise an experience over here and then they're not delivering on it. Or they change what they've delivered in the past in the hopes of going off after somebody new. So this is a really great quote that I loved. Brands are not just the logos, color schemes, and visual aesthetics. They are the living stories and experiences that create memories and emotions in people's lives. And that is true for a big public brand like a Cracker Barrel, but I feel like it's even more true for nonprofits because we're not selling a product here. You're not saying, I need laundry detergent, and this is the laundry detergent that my mother buys, so I'm loyal to it. You've got to make a case to connect with people's emotions, tie them in, and keep them attached to you over time, so that their experiences build up to attract them in deeper. So the part where you're trying to create brand value, where people are creating that emotion, doesn't live in tactics necessarily. That's not where you can necessarily plan it. You can deliver on it, but the other side of that comes from understanding where you're pointing your brand. And in some ways, I think this is where Cracker Barrel might have missed the mark for them. They have a loving audience base that is attracted to them, and they went for somebody new. And they maybe didn't think about how that was going to impact the people that have been there all the time. And so I always ask people, like, do you know your audience? And people always tell me, yes, they do. And the question is, but do you? So if your brand only exists in the hearts and minds of others, of your audience, do you really know their hearts and minds? Do you know why they show up? Do you know why they stick around? Do you know why they give back to your organization specifically? Like, why you? Like, maybe you're a cancer research organization. Why do they give to your cancer research organization versus the gazillions of other ones that are out there that they could potentially give to? So when I say you have to prioritize and design for your most important audiences, it's typically met with resistance from people. It's really natural to want to be loved and admired and funded by everyone. If I asked you who's your audience, who's your perfect audience, the answer is usually, well, everyone, because what we do is valuable and everyone should care about that. But think about it. Do you treat all your friends the same? Are there some friends that you will fly across the country for if they need you, and some that you maybe screen their calls because you don't actually want that call, right? In life, we don't have the capacity to give 100% of our energy to everyone in our lives. You want all these people in your lives, right? But you can't, I hate it feels terrible to say it, but we all know you can't give everyone everything or there's just nothing left, right? Neither can your organization. And if you try to do it, you'll probably get the occasional gift, but you're not going to be in their will, right? You want to attract the kind of people in that they love you so much, you end up in their will. And it's okay and it's wonderful to have different kinds and different layers of friends. But imagine having 1,000 friends on Facebook who occasionally like your posts, but nobody that you feel you could truly call if you have really good news or a really bad day. We all need an inner circle that we can rely on. And that's what building a brand that considers your audience can do for you. Understanding that core audience is the key to attracting more people like them and drawing them into the center. We call these your lovers and your likers. And once you really understand those people, that's how you can then build up in creating a message for them. Have you ever felt like, I don't know what to say to people. I don't know what they want. I don't know what they want to hear from me. I don't know what to write in my marketing emails. It often comes from, not really knowing who are you talking to? What are their hopes and dreams? Why are they here? What do they care about? When you understand your people, that's when you can write a message that resonates. And if you've ever felt like your message is all over the place, it's often because you're being forced to cast a really wide net, hoping that enough fish swim in that you'll survive. You can only really develop effective messaging if you know who you're speaking to and what they actually care about. And so when you get it all working together, that's really when you have this flywheel. So this top half of the circle, audience and message, that's where you build the brand strategy. It's harder, it's slower, and honestly, it's not as much fun and pretty as the other side of things. But if you don't understand the people who love you and value you enough, you can often end up just throwing tactic after tactic after tactic, like hoping something sticks. And honestly, that could work. I'm a brand strategist, so we love the strategy part of things. It's a wonderful opportunity to be able to go back and pause and really think about the audience, think about the message, and build back up. But there's other ways to learn about it too. You can learn about your audience through executing. I'm going to try this and I'm going to try this and I'm going to see what works. Now, a lot of times though, what I see happening is that we live in this executional space, inexperience. You're doing a lot of different things, but you're not tracking. You're not paying attention. You're not actually looking to see what's resonating with people and what's not resonating with people. And if you're not taking that in, you're not actually going to learn anything and be able to say, this worked, this didn't. So let's move this way. Let's try this next experiment. Let's try this next experiment. But if you are tracking it, putting out a lot of experiences and working at learning what your brand is through seeing what resonates with your audience can be a wonderful way to do things. It does, both paths take time, right? So you're either going to spend your time going back and doing research and thinking and then launching something, or you're going to spend your time executing, executing, executing. So where the risk is, as you see from Cracker Barrel, is that when you execute, it's public, right? And if you've taken a significant misstep by not understanding your audience, it's out there for all the world to see. And in some cases, it can affect your finances. Tactical paths start outside and lead in. Strategic paths start inside and work their way out. So these are a really good way to think about when you're interested in branding and you're interested in building a deeper story and deeper connections. Which is the path for you? What makes sense? So I'm a believer that brand does a tremendous job in helping build your relationships. A lot of times what we say is that brand is the bridge that connects your mission to your marketing. We see a lot of times people will write a new strategic plan. So a new strategic plan means you've got all these new goals and strategies and directions that you're going. And sometimes there's some audience work done in strategic planning, right? And so that basically to me means we've done a new strategic plan, and that means that we're moving our North Star. Kind of what's the point of doing a strategic plan if you're not going to do something big and new and strategic out of it? So you've moved your North Star, you've made a shift. And then a lot of times that shift, those decisions end up kind of staying with the board, with the leadership, and it doesn't always trickle down into, well, what events are we having? What programs are we doing? What marketing are we putting out there? And then you have these things kind of running on two parallel tracks. If you don't take your marketing and point it towards your strategic plan goals, you could end up at the end of your 3 or 5 year plan having worked hard and have lots of execution, lots of experiences to show for it, but never have met these new goals. So brand helps you connect the story. How do you pull your audience, your message, your image together so that when you're out here on the other side, creating programs and events and all kinds of things that you might do, that it helps you get there. So revenue is a byproduct of this. Revenue is created through confidence and trust. Nobody gives you money if they don't believe in you. There's a million other ways that they can spend their money. Trust and confidence and belief are keys to actually building a donor space. So often in my early years, and I worked as an art director at a nonprofit before I started the company. And a lot of times they'd say things like, make it look good, but not too good. We don't want it to look so good that people think that we have all the money we need and we don't need any more money. Personally, I think that is flawed thinking. I believe donors want to give to people that are going to amplify their money and create more impact. Think of it like an investor. You know, when somebody invests money into a fund, into the Walmart, into a Cracker Barrel fund, they want to see that money grow. And the people they believe are going to help make that money grow are people that look like they know what they're doing. So when you're out there communicating, demonstrating, interacting with people, using your brand visually, consistently, when the experiences that people have are aligned with your promise, do what they want them to do, they believe in you, they have trust, and they're willing to give you their money and say, make this do what I want it to do. Because the reality is, nobody cares that you exist, which I know sounds like a really harsh thing to say, but people don't care that you particularly exist. They care that where they invest their money fuels their dreams. They're giving for themselves and to make the things that they want to see happen in the world come to life. You are a conduit that's going to make that happen. And so they want to put that money in the place where they believe that the thing that they want to see happen in the world is going to be amplified the biggest. Is that you? Right? And so revenue comes from people believing that you're the one that can make their dreams come true. Right? And then retention comes from revenue created over time. So loyalty comes out of repeat experiences that live up to what you promise and creating a culture inside and out that supports your ability to deliver on those promises. And inside is important too. Your staff is the first line of your brand. Every interaction that people have with anyone is what is going to help people see who you are. So delivering on those expectations is where reputation comes out of. Reputation only exists in the hearts and minds of others. And the only way we can influence it is deciding who we want to be and then showing up in alignment with that. All right, so I'm going to tell you a little bit more stories. So Cracker Barrel, not the first person to go through this. Does anybody remember this? You know, it was, 1990, which yes, is a long time ago now. But Gap, exactly the same thing. So clearly people are not learning from other people's mistakes. As humans, I feel like we just don't do that. We all have to learn from our own mistakes. So it's a lot easier to feel like branding is a bad idea when you hear hyped up stories like this. But like what happened to Cracker Barrel, not new, right? Many marketers believe that Gap embarked on a mission to modernize the company because of the same things, failing sales, failing stocks. But other people believe that they were just simply experiencing what's called brand fatigue, which means somebody high up said, I'm bored with this, let's change it. I don't know if any of you ever been through a branding project like that or any kind of project like that. Somebody with the power to say, I don't like it, let's do something different, has a knee-jerk reaction and just wants change. This happens a lot when branding projects come out of a new CEO coming in and just saying, I'm the new CEO, let's change things. It also happens when new CEOs come in with actual goals and strategies, and you need a new brand to support the new direction that the CEO wants to take. But sometimes new CEOs come in and just want to put their stamp on things. That's when you end up with fails like that, because it's done from completely internal reasons and not from strategic reasons at all. So, okay, so that's an example of a like big public fail about that. But you know what? It can also do really great things to help organizations. So this is the Histiocytosis Association. Took me a month to be able to say that when when we were working with them. When we started working with them, they were doing a lot. They were changing their CRM system, they were building a new website, and they were 21 years old, and other competition was starting to come up that never existed before. This histiocytosis is a very, very rare disease. And so they started out as the only people that were helping anybody from it. But over time, other people came in, more doctors started studying the disease. And what was happening was that donors weren't really understanding or appreciating the value of everything that they did. They wanted every nickel that they gave to the organization to go directly into funding a cure. Understandable, because the funders of this organization are typically parents of children. This is a disease that very prominently affects children between 2 and 5. So you've got parents of young children who want to have a healthy child, and they want to put all of their money into whatever doctor is going to figure that out. Understandable, but they weren't really understanding the entire picture. So this created an opportunity to create a substantive change that would really help them tie their strategy and their identity back together. So as you can see, we created this logo. But that was the endpoint. So I showed you the logo, right? So this is the brand as of, so we did this in 2010. And normally it's like, oh, let's show the latest and newest projects. But I think when we're talking deeply about branding, we have to talk about branding over time. If we're going to talk about revenue and reputation and retention, if I just showed you somebody that I launched yesterday, not very helpful. So in this case, their revenue was about 1.5 million at the time. We had created this new logo, but we'd created the logo after we did some research. So we did conversations, we talked to stakeholders, we had interviews with people, we talked to doctors, we talked to volunteers, we talked to parents. We really talked to their whole community to truly understand, what does this organization mean to people? What is valuable about it? Why do you give to this organization and not the other ones? And we kept hearing the same words over and over again. Um, Things like the fact that this is the only organization that brings patients and doctors together. Like, I can get access directly to a doctor here and ask my questions, as opposed to going through the healthcare system. It's a community. We are like, our kids are fighting, we're fighting. A lot about like this idea of fighting. And then access to the best resources. And so this logo, if you're outside, you wouldn't necessarily know it, but it's very meaningful to the community. It's intended to represent the patients and the doctors being woven together and in a circle, because it's a feedback loop. The research that the doctors do can only come from being funded. You know, when that funding comes, new treatments come out. When new treatments come out, the organization can create new educational resources. And then when the next mom of a 2-year-old calls because their kid has this terrifying diagnosis, they can then point them where to go. It's a circle. And everything that we talked about with them started coming up with this idea. So now today, their organization is over $3.6 million, right? They have grown. They've actually transitioned from their founding executive director. They're now on their second executive director since then. And as you can see, they've kept a consistent color palette. And you can even see some of those keywords 15 years later. They're doing these question and answer posts, which speaks to place to find answers. They've got this whole campaign that they're doing called No Histio, which is about knowledge, and it's both about eradicating the disease, but doing it through education and learning. And then on the homepage of their website, they talk about fighting for a cure. So 15 years later, they've changed the window dressing. They've changed the look and feel to modernize it. So you can change the graphic look and evolve over time and still stay true to your center, because they did the work to understand who they were and who they needed to be. So retention, you know, I talked about Gap, I talked about Cracker Barrel, JCPenney, same thing, right? They did the same thing, you know, a number of years ago, I think it was 2012, where they decided, a new CEO came in and said, we want younger people, which is like the mantra. I should have that on a tattoo. Younger people are not the answer. That's my tattoo, right? Or at least random younger people are not the answer. It's like, imagine your lovers are in the center of a target, right? and you've been aiming for them for years. It's not working anymore. So instead, what you do is to say, you know what? We're going to shoot for somebody totally different from them. And we're going to aim for that outside ring of the target so that we get more and more, just more, right? If you aim for the outside edge of the target, are you ever going to hit the center? Probably not. What's most likely going to happen is that you're going to miss the target entirely. And then all those lovers who are in the middle of your circle who've been there and supported you over time, they're like, who are we again? So what JCPenney did is they switched up to this new minimalist logo. They changed it to lowercase. They wanted to be casual and friendly. They revamped their stores into shops within shops. They wanted a boutique-like feel. You can see from their website that they went with really like editorial photography to make it be like, you know, I guess you would call it bougie today. But they changed everything and got away from their like sale model. And it was a disaster. Their sales slipped 25% in the first year. Their stock price went from 42 to under $6, right? These changes confused their longtime customers, and then they felt that the brand no longer understood them or served them. They wanted it to feel aspirational, but instead it ended up feeling alienating, and they lost a ton of credibility and customer trust. So, like everybody else, they went back. This is what their website looks like today, right? And so this was 2023, so not that long ago. They returned, you can see it up in the top corner. They returned to their classic old logo, and they've invested, ready? $1 billion in changing things over to refocus on their core customer. $1 billion, right? So really thinking about what is the place you need to start your branding project, crucially important. Interestingly though, here's the thing. They refocused on their core customers. This is what their website looked like, but they didn't give up. They didn't say, guess that's who we have. So a lot of times people feel like when you focus on your core, that you can't grow. Not true, right? In fact, Megan, our art director, who's a millennial, just told me that she's hearing them advertised on podcasts all over the place. So they're starting to advertise on like hip young people podcasts. And I said, really, why would they do that? She said, well, JCPenney's is known for selling Levi's, and Levi's are hip right now. So that was an entry point. They've always been known for selling Levi's, so core customer value. But now a new audience is becoming interested in this product. So they're going out and finding ways to connect with them. They're also becoming, believe it or not, a beauty brand. Has anybody seen this? They're becoming a big hip beauty brand on TikTok. And the way they're doing that is they're trying to compete with Sephora and Ulta by having indie beauty brands that they're not carrying. And they're also trying to make big inroads with diversity and highlighting and showcasing beauty brands of diverse founders of small companies. And so it's giving people that are into makeup, into that sort of thing, a way to access stuff that they couldn't access, which is amazing. And so that's the thing. You think that you can't break out, but when you go beyond demographics, like we want young people, and understand the values of your core customer, what do they care about? You can find ways to find new potential customers that share those same values without getting pulled off your center. Because what do older people on a budget care about that younger people on a budget also care about? Like saving money. So I feel like there's always a path to get to who you want to, but it's going through what people share as values so that those old guard people don't drop out. Like imagine you've got your top donor base right now and you just said, we don't care about you. We're going to focus on something different. In the effort to get there, it could all fall apart. So here's a nonprofit version of that. So this is New England Village, and they are a intellectual disability service organization up in the Boston area. And they knew that they needed to change, well, at least they thought they needed to change their name. So they came in with an assumption. We need to change our name. It's too broad. It's too vague. Nobody knows what we do, right? And so they decided they wanted to change it. But instead of just saying, Beth, change our name, they said, you know what, let's start with a brand feasibility study. Let's understand the working environment and the opinions that people have here. So we did a lot of work to talk to people. We heard some really interesting things. So we asked them about the name. It's sort of like ask for money and you get support, ask for support and you get money, you know. So we asked them a lot about the name and we heard a lot about the logo. And there was obviously contention. Some people loved it, some people don't. But ultimately, over time, what had happened is since they created this logo, the organization had grown and they had day programs. They have even programs for just wellness in the community. And so what was happening was that a lot of people were feeling like this residential logo that looks like a summer camp didn't really represent all the things that the organization did, which, you know, can be a problem or cannot be a problem. But we were doing this project at the very beginning of the pandemic, and the staff was burned out. So this is a direct service care staff that deals with a residential program. So they had to work pandemic or no pandemic. This was the first time that I really realized that the staff is a capital B big audience. It's really easy to want to talk to people and feel like you've learned things by talking to your customers, by talking to your donors, by talking to like your leadership and your external people. But this changed my thinking about this. And I realized we've got to understand how the staff thinks and feels because they're the people that are delivering on the brand every day. It was huge. They asked great questions and they really kind of changed how we believed about things, right? So then we went deeper and said, okay, the logo is probably a problem, but what does that mean? If we're not going to change the name, how do we address that? Is it visual? Everything. So we started talking and we thought maybe a tagline could solve that problem. So we started having some conversations about, well, if we're going to use a tagline, do we use it to explain what the organization does? Like New England Village, do we have the tagline say, and an intellectual disabilities services company organization, clarifier, or do we do something different? And it's possible that because we did this during the pandemic, people were feeling the need for inspiration, but that's where they went. They ended up deciding that they needed something that truly represented themselves. And so as you can see, this logo that we created is built on the themes that we learned from talking to people: interconnected community, caring, innovative. But like we really leaned into this idea visually of this interconnected community. There's 5 lines here in 5 different colors, and they actually represent the 5 different programs. And so we wanted to say, if we're going to bother change, this is the thing, don't change from something, change to something, right? We do a lot of mascot work for schools. Especially right now, we're doing a lot of work kind of getting rid of socially inappropriate mascots, things that were previously Indians, things like that. And so there's a lot of emotional attachment to a mascot. And so we want people to feel like they're gaining something new versus losing something that they had an attachment to. So by building something that is visual, but based on the deeply rooted values of a community, we were able to create something that has true meaning for this community. And it's had a great success. So what they tell me now is that the staff feels really represented and included. Recruitment efforts have gotten easier and have really been strengthened. Donors are, because we made this change and it changed, visual changes really telegraph strategic changes. Donors are starting to ask questions like, tell me more about these other programs that you have. Why are there 5 lines? What is the sum total of what you do? Why is that important? You know, and it's really reinforcing the overall perception for this organization that they are forward looking and forward thinking. And so sometimes you can do something visual and that's enough because it shows that progress and forward and change. Sometimes that visual that you create is so much better and strengthened when it comes out of the center of who your organization is. Another problem child here. We all remember anyone remember this one? This is the first and probably the biggest nonprofit based branding crisis that I can recall. Susan Komen, there's a few other organizations that have had some ones, but this is the first one that I remember that sort of impacted me, which is the Lance Armstrong Foundation. And so now this is the perfect example of an organization that started, at least in my opinion, in image. It started because of the image and identity of a famous founder. And it started, I first heard about it when I walked into a Nike store and saw a giant bin of these plastic bracelets. They're ubiquitous now, But this was the first one. These people in this organization basically invented the idea of collecting these bracelets, and they became huge. Kids everywhere were wearing them. It was ginormous. And then things went sideways, right? And this is a problem sometimes when everything is rooted in such a tight image like a person, right? And so they've gone through a lot of brand iterations over time. So Nike came on board as a partner in 2010. They were founded in 1997, but by 2012, Lance had to separate himself from the organization for it to be able to survive. So following the departure, the organization really thought about, like, what do we do? Do we get rid of everything? And they've made a lot of different changes over the years, as you can see. Most recently in 2020, they went in a completely different direction. They decided they wanted to come up with an identity that really moved them away from the wristband. Again, I wasn't in the boardroom. This was not my project. But by 2024, they went back to, they say a new logo, but it's really one that reinforces their sort of original look and feel. I don't know the reasons behind it, but I know that a new CEO came in at that time and decided that this is something that we need to go back to. So it's important to think about your reputation is about more than aesthetics. If trust is undermined, like it was when a founder's personal identity was compromised, it's really hard to get it back. And I have to say, this organization was faced with a huge challenge. They could have just folded, but they didn't. And I think the reason they didn't fold is because how they handled it. They didn't just change the logo and call it a day. They acknowledged and addressed the underlying issue. They took concrete steps. They changed their governance. They changed their mission. They rebranded visually and strategically. And so they changed their message alignment. And these things all really made a difference to allow them to still be in existing and thriving today. Similar problem with a client that we actually had, which was a small museum in Wilmington, Delaware. This was a museum that was, for financial reasons, forced to de-accession, which means sell. That's curation speak for sell artwork, which is a huge no-no in the cultural world, right? And so their donors were not pleased. They were really unhappy with them, and it was a huge problem. And so they knew that they had to start doing something different. The world had changed. This is an organization in Delaware where the DuPont family is from. And when they were founded, DuPont money basically paid for everything. Not the case anymore. Generational wealth gets diluted. People have different interests. So they knew strategically they had to start thinking about a different way to find their donors. And they're based in Wilmington, Delaware, which is a very diverse city. And they were feeling very much like they weren't really representative of their community. So they went in and really did a new strategic plan and rethought who they needed to be as an organization for them to, not just for them to thrive as an organization, but for them to be a valuable asset in this community, which is a brilliant way to look at doing a strategic plan. And it really helped. So we took that work, thought about it, and helped them build new, we call them personas, right? And so with new personas, after we understood their audiences, we went in and looked at, like, who is your lover? Who are your lovers today? And of course, it was, as we call her, 78-year-old white Barbara, which makes an organization who wants to be more representative of their diverse community go, you know, I'm sure you've all felt that way, like, oh, not another person that's just like our person. But they were really smart and they understood that branding is a process, not a project. They weren't going to turn the ship overnight. And if they said, Barbara is no longer our person, we want Makai, a 21-year-old Black artist, to be our person today, where's Barbara going to go? I don't see myself here anymore, right? But instead, they took a long game approach and we created their lover. And then we we're like, okay, if that's your lover, who's your liker? Who's the person that's kind of like Barbara, but maybe demographically different? How do we get to her? And then who are some people that are showing up in your orbit that are a lot closer to this new kind of person you want to reach? How can we build a persona about them? But let's, out of all of the potential personas we could get to, who do you already see showing up even a little bit? And what can we learn about the values that all of these people share so that we can turn the ship slowly, keeping a centered message to ultimately get you there over time? And I think this is huge because one of the key messages we ended up putting out is number 3 here on the list. We wanted to start saying this is this connected message from the old people to the new people, founded by our community, committed to being of our community. So they wanted to start situating themselves as representative and being part of the community, as opposed to somebody that is delivering something to the community. It's one of the things I personally hate the word, and you people might have very different opinions than me. I struggle with the word empower, because sometimes that word to me can feel like I have power and I'm choosing to bestow it upon you. I tend to like the word agency, because agency to me feels like it's coming from within, and that's the place they wanted to live. And so this is where they are now. So when we started working with them, they were like between a $3 and a $4 million organization. We started in 2017. The website got launched in 2020. It's now, and then there was a pandemic and they had to shut everything down. They're a museum, no patrons, but it was amazing. Over time, they worked, they planned. The beauty of a museum, though, is that curating an exhibit can take over a year. So the pandemic actually gave them time to figure out how are they going to be showing and living this promise that they're making once they reopen. And look at what they have on their website now as their programs. Tons of diversity, all kinds of different things, and this great positioning that says the Del Art Museum connects Greater Wilmington's aesthetic roots to its creative future. It's simple, it's dramatic, it's a big idea, and it's compelling to all of these audiences. So as we're wrapping up here, we want to leave a few minutes for questions. As Amanda knows, I always go all the way to the end. This is a big deal, and it's really important for you to think about where you need to start. Where when you're thinking about branding, where are you now? Maybe you're not at a place where you're going to gut your logo and start over again, but there's always a place that you can start thinking about your brand, right? And so maybe you're at the place that you need to go back and think about audience. This is where you want to start when you're feeling like I'm struggling to answer any of these questions, right? Oh, Beth, this sounds great. I have no idea, right? And you don't know what's working. You don't know what's not working. You don't know who your people are, right? Message, you can start here by fixing your message if you are clear on your audience. Personally, if you're not clear on your audience and who you need to serve, you can write copy, but you can't do messaging. Messaging is rooted in strategy. Copy is rooted in marketing. I actually just wrote a blog post about that, that you can read it on the website if you want to. It's exactly that point. Next is image. If you've got all that stuff figured out, clarity on your audience. You don't necessarily have to have your message done, but if you have clarity on your audience, it will do a lot to help you work on your image. Obviously, you can make things look prettier and more modern here without doing any of that. And sometimes that's enough. It's enough to get you where you are right now. But sometimes you could be in the place like Cracker Barrel and JCPenney and Gap, where you think you can change the image and you're dead wrong. And last, experience is a place to go, where you can also go there to deliver all of this stuff, but you can also start here if you're willing to track and see what you learn from it. So before changing your logo, it's wise to ask, what is this change really going to signal to, in this case, the consumer, but to you, your constituent, your lover, your likers, your emerging audiences. So that's what I have for you today. And as Amanda said in the beginning, there's so much to talk about branding, and there's not enough of it for us. So I felt like there's no place that nonprofits can go to really immerse themselves in this idea. You can go to the wonderful conferences that are out there that are for fundraising, and there might be a session about it. You can go to a branding conference, but I've been to corporate branding conferences, and it's a great way to learn how McDonald's on a tight budget only could do one laser light show. That's not our world. So I wanted to create something that is of our world, and I'm so lucky that Bonterra has come in to partner with us on this and help us get this message, get this product out there for everybody. So we're running this, it's virtual, so anybody can come from anywhere. And because you all came today, we wanted to give you a little gift. And so because of Bonterra's generosity, we're able to give you a $100 discount on the conference. There's a QR code here, and then another one here on this last page where you can also go find me. And Amanda, what kind of questions did we have pop in?
All right. Thank you so much, Beth. Yeah, take a sip of water. You covered a ton of information in a quick amount of time, and appreciate all of your insights and real world examples and things of that nature. I think we have time for a couple of questions. First and foremost, I saw some folks ask if there is such thing as too many brand changes in a short amount of time.
Such a
Like,
good question.
is there a point where you have to wait, 10, 15 years, 5
Mhm.
years, 1 month? Is there some guidance on that?
I love this question. This is a great question because you're absolutely right. Yes, there is such a thing as too many brand changes because every time you change something, you are expending not just money, but you're expending brand equity with your audience. So you're now taking the time to indoctrinate your client or your customer, your donor into this new brand. And you're like, now we're green. And then if you change it too quickly, now we're blue. Wait, what? It starts impacting recall and connection, right? And then you've got to re-indoctrinate people. So that's one problem. The other thing is when you make a change, whether you've changed a teeny thing or a big thing, it can take 18 months to really get everything kind of rolled out and turned over. I did a webinar with the University of Pennsylvania one time, and they added a hairline rule between the University of Pennsylvania and the like School of Business. And he's like, I can't believe they did this. It's like the littlest thing. It did nothing of value. And it's like a year and a half later, and we're still finding logos that don't have the rule in it. So my answer to that is I think every 3 to 5 years, you should take a look at your brand. Don't necessarily change anything, but you should just do it brand check-in and see where you are. And evaluate, do we need to make, like, are we still where we need to be? Do we need to make a big change or a little change or no change, right? Interestingly enough, it's so funny, great question. But our keynote speaker for the conference is actually one of the brand leaders at UNICEF. And he's actually going to be talking about how to do a brand health check. And so it'll be interesting to see if his opinion is different than mine. Personally, I think doing a big change any sooner than like between 5 and 10 years is too soon. That's my sort of personal opinion, but it comes with a huge, it depends if there's been a crisis, if there's been a problem, or if you've really made a shift that makes what you've done not work anymore. That's why you should just do a check-in. I would say every time you do a strategic plan, you should do a brand check-in. That's probably a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, I like that. All right, we probably have time for one or two more questions. I know we're coming up on time, and folks are starting to hop off. I did see some folks asking about like understanding their audience. And so I did want to take this moment to say, like, if you are somebody who is trying to figure out how to track all of that donor information and you need a system in place to help you do that, that's kind of our gig here.
Yeah.
So if that is you, fill out the poll on the screen. And I'll leave that up for a second. Well, Beth, this is an adjacent question from
Mhm.
Frankie, who had asked, how do you manage a brand when your audience and your donors are so different?
Mhm. That's a really great question. And this is one of the hardest things. And the answers is like, I don't know. Let me do the research for you. But this also ties into the previous statement that Amanda just made. Your database, and a good database, is absolutely your best branding asset that you could possibly ever imagine. Because the answers to a lot of these questions about who are your people and what do they care about live in your data. It lives in looking at who showed up at that event. Did they also give at that event? How many times did they give? When we do what we call a stakeholder session, where we get like a first look at like what are our desirable actions and who are all of our audiences, and we narrow down. But the best thing to do is look and see, like, does what we think actually hold up within our data? The best branding work is rooted in data, and it's rooted in, I hate to say it, finance. People often look at these as marketing projects, and that's the end. The outward expression of it is marketing. But a brand done well will answer the question, upon whom does your future depend? And your future depends on attracting enough people that care about what you care about significantly enough that they can give it the levels you need to give frequently enough in order for you to do the work that you both care about. It's that simple. You need to focus, you need to understand those people. And so when you say you've got all these different audiences, you've got a lot of different donors, that's the first step, is figuring out, number one, upon whom does your future depend? That's your lover audience. Your clients may also be an audience, your donors may be an audience, but which one is priority really comes down to thinking about what does that mean for you? Because it doesn't mean money for everybody. Some people are funded through like federal grants. And so how the money comes in is less important to how are we going to find people to deliver the services to.
Yeah.
So don't think that answer only means money, but it is about really looking at and thinking about, start with this, asking yourselves, and maybe do this exercise at your next meeting. What are all the desirable actions that we need people to be taking in order for us to thrive? And which one is the leading domino? We start there before we even think about audiences, because then what we want to look at is, out of all of our audiences, who are the people that are taking those important actions the most, and we want to learn about them. We may not stay there, but like if you have to learn about the people that allow you to thrive, or you're going to end up like Cracker Barrel.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Beth. There's so much information. I know so much more to talk about.
I know. So come to the conference.
Come to the conference. That's what I was going to say. I just dropped the link in the chat one more time for folks who are interested in coming. As you can see, that's why we're so excited about being a part of this conference. There's truly so much to talk through and learn and understand, and kind of, put yourself in these different organizations' shoes and see where you can see, yourself making those changes. Do you have more programs represented now, right? Things of that nature. And so, Beth, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk through a lot of these really big concepts in a way that is digestible for folks. And I hope you can see the thank yous coming in through the chat from folks saying that this was super helpful and informative, a really excellent presentation, and just really helpful for folks at all different stages who are in, the grassroots to more advanced areas. So thank you, Beth, so much. We're really excited to be a part of the conference with you. And again, check out the link in the chat if you haven't seen it. I'm going to do it one more time, even though I said this was the last time, just in case you haven't grabbed it yet. And Jarvis, yes, this webinar recording will be available. We'll email it to everybody next week. So keep an eye on your email to watch the replay. Really appreciate all of you being here. And Beth, thank you so much again.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure. And thank you all for staying on a couple of minutes extra. I always am the queen of an hour and 6 minutes.
That's true. There's just too much. There's too much good information.
I know there's so much to say, but I'm thrilled to have been here. Thank you all for having me. And hopefully we'll see you in a few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Beth. Take care, everyone. Bye.